Yeah, I think it was comfortable. I think we made it possibly more difficult for ourselves than we needed to with the period of defending that led to the goal. But I think in general we played well. We did what the game required, which was, as I said beforehand to the players, play it in a really tight, controlled, disciplined way. And there were a couple of things that we really wanted to work on today. A couple of things that I feel like we can approach this tournament with in mind. And I think a lot of what we talked about today was reflected in the performance, and that amounted to a game that I felt like we controlled. We were probably good value for more goals than we ultimately scored, and I think almost to a man we approached it with a real seriousness that sometimes that those types of games can let slip away to an extent. But I think for the large part we were really good.
What's it about Bongi's performance?
Yeah, I felt like it's said often in the dressing room that he comes alive in this competition. I think it was a thing that was talked about a lot before I came here, and I think you saw tonight real spark from him, some real quality between the lines that I think he'd be the first to say you don't always see. I think we're always pushing him for more quality between the lines, more reliability on the ball, less turnovers, more efficient use of it. And I think you saw that to a good level today. He got his goal and he worked hard, and that is what's required of him. And I think Bongi's a really good player for us in the sense that he's very versatile. He can play right wing back, he can play between the lines. But what I don't want is for him to become a victim of his versatility. And then when he comes to play, he has that number 10 that he's lost that sense of how to handle the ball under real pressure between the lines. And I think sometimes you've seen the worst of that, but tonight I felt like you saw him at a really good level, and he was tough to handle.
Who said what about his performance in 2023 in this tournament?
No, I think it's tongue in cheek, but I think he came alive, didn't he, in the Leagues Cup the year before, and I think he obviously had a couple of good moments for us in the tournament last year, and I for sure cannot say that's the case this year, because I think he's been a really good player for us all the way through. But certainly tonight you saw him play with a real freedom. I think in the first half where we got the two number 10s really well connected with one another, I think the way that the opposition defended meant that the closer the players were from our perspective together, the more they were able to link with one another, the more they were able to play the little combinations off Kelvin or between one another, the more the space opened up. And I think most of the better moments in the first half came through Joaquin and Bongi being close to one another, and obviously that's the start point, but then from that point on was real clean combinations, real precision on the ball. That's what it needed, and that's what we saw at our best.
Obviously, you might not have known everything about how they'd play coming into this game. How did it sort of change your tactics and your game plan early on when they weren't pressing very much?
Yeah, I think we had a sense of it being probably one extreme or another prior to the game. We would either see very, very aggressive man-for-man pressing, or we would see the opposition defending relatively low. And I think that's what we saw in the opening stages, and that gave us an opportunity to really work on some of the things that we want to get better at. We want to be a team that has more control in the first third when it is required. And I showed the team some clips beforehand, actually, of us sitting at both ends of the spectrum when it comes to how we use the ball, and wanting to be a team that can do both. I want us to be a team that at our very best can be very direct and be very strategic and detailed in how we do that, but also be a team that when the game requires, that can handle the ball, that can take 10, 15, 20 passes per phase to work the ball up the pitch more slowly. And I think we did a good job with that in the first half. But crucially, what I don't want us to lose ever is that ability to change pace quickly, use quick combinations between the lines, use the pace of the forwards, and I think we struck that balance really well. So it was nice in a way to have a chance to work on some of the things that we talked about in that sense.
Empezar esta clase de torneos con el pie derecho es muy importante, la confianza de los jugadores y la confianza también en el cuerpo técnico. Ahora viene un juego que va a ser mediáticamente muy importante porque van a enfrentarse a uno de los equipos más importantes de México el sábado en Houston. ¿Cómo preparar este juego y cómo digerir esta victoria que es muy importante para la historia del club?
Yeah, he estado viendo su partido contra Real Salt Lake en ese momento, y en ese momento creo que ellos están perdiendo, pero sabemos que son un equipo muy grande en su país y para nosotros ahora haber ganado hoy, jugar contra ellos en lo que espero es una atmósfera enorme en Houston. Sería un desafío enorme para nosotros y queremos que podemos mostrar nuestra fuerza, representar el país de una manera en que podemos mostrar nuestra capacidad de competir con los mejores y ahora haber ganado tenemos la oportunidad de continuar con nuestra progresión y queremos progresar en ese torneo y no va a ser posible sin por lo menos empatar con ellos en circunstancias muy difíciles y por eso ahora tenemos la plataforma, pero necesitamos confirmar nuestro estatus en ese nivel contra Club América.
Coach, ¿qué significa para Minnesota arrancar con una victoria tan abultada en este torneo, que en esta ocasión se presenta un nuevo formato en donde es muy importante sacar los primeros 3 puntos?
No hay margen para error en ese sentido y he hecho muy claro para los jugadores esa semana que para nosotros no es posible perder los partidos en casa. Y después de haber ganado hoy, ahora tenemos un desafío enorme contra Club América, pero los jugadores quieren ese tipo de desafío porque para ellos tener ese sentido de jugar un final en esa época de la liga es muy importante y en mente tenemos partidos en los playoffs, partidos en el Open Cup y tan temprano en la temporada tener la oportunidad de jugar partidos que sienten como finales es muy importante y sábado en Houston contra ellos va a sentir como un final y para nosotros es una cosa muy positiva y ahora con la plataforma que hoy nos ha dado, podemos enfrentarnos a ellos con un sentido de confianza y estar contento con la actuación hoy.
Does this tournament feel especially strange given that you're competing with only teams from Mexico on the field, but only teams from MLS in the standings?
Yeah, interesting format, and obviously it's been reflected in the change in European competitions, so I'm sort of more familiar with it than I would have been had that not been the case last year. And it makes for an interesting competition, but it makes it really difficult to progress. And as I say, there is absolutely no margin for error. I can imagine that it's very possible to win 3 games and still not progress. And I think tonight the fact that we were able to win very convincingly hopefully puts us in good stead when it comes to the determining factors if there are teams on the same number of points. But for us now, having won 3 tonight, 1 is absolute minimum on Saturday against Club America, and that will be no question a really difficult thing to go and achieve. But I think now we've got over this hurdle, we have what we need to really feel like we can progress and attack the top of the table.
When you have a free kick in a dangerous area like that, do you just leave it up to the players, or do you have directives and things you want to see?
No, I think what obviously the big difference between free kicks in those sort of areas and corners are that it's very difficult to determine who's best equipped based on the change of angle, the variation in the way the opposition can set up. There's almost like a million different moving parts in terms of where the ball's positioned around the box, and also you've got to account for the players' feeling. And I feel like we've probably got 5 or 6 players that would put their hand up to take that. But as it transpired, I was stood directly behind it, and you could see it was really well set for a right footer. I think they used the screeners really well. I think it was Nico Romero and one other. I think they positioned themselves really cleverly, and I think you've got to give the players the scope to make those types of decisions. We do have talked about some principles in terms of that type of thing, making sure there's screeners, making sure that there's a level of communication. But I think from that point onwards, it's about the players and confidence in what they feel and read. And I think Kelvin now is a player that is really gaining that confidence, and I think that's really important for him at this stage of the season. So I was really pleased for him, and it was a really nice goal.
Not seeing boxing until late. No Will. Was that try to keep an eye on Saturday a little bit?
Yeah, I think we were fairly hopeful of it being an opportunity for both Will and Boxy, really, and Marcanic, to be honest, prior to the game, that for them not to play, in the sense that they've accumulated a lot of minutes. I think Ant is obviously, he's found it tough to finish games, particularly away from home in the searing heat. And I think had we been able to avoid all three of them play this week, then it would have been a nice thing to do. But I felt like at that stage of the game, and I think it was justified in hindsight, we felt like we needed that leadership from Boxy. I felt like he really shored up the back line and obviously did what he does at the moment, which is come on and make a real mark and look a real threat. So I think we had the conversation relentlessly on the bench as to whether, say, 20, 30 minutes for those guys would be good for them just to continue their rhythm, or in the case of the older guys, Boxy and Will, whether it would be best for them to just use this as a rare opportunity to have some time off. So I think on balance it panned out really well for us, and also it wasn't a hugely taxing game physically as per the data showed.
Obviously, you've got a lot of games going right now. You're competing on multiple fronts, and like you said, every game feels like a big game. How do you keep exhaustion from sort of creeping in with the players?
Yeah, well, we number one, do what we've done tonight, which is be really intentional with how we change players. We've obviously made 5 changes that have allowed 5 players to play sort of between 60 and 70 minutes, and others to play between 20 and 30. And we're down to, having lost Hoyun and the 3 players that we've moved on that all played minutes over the course of the year, we're down to a relatively small squad. So I think for us, it's about being really, really sensible and ruthless to an extent in terms of how we make changes. I feel like, as an example, with Joaquin today, probably not the stage of the game, having just conceded that we would necessarily want to take him off. But I think you look at the players that have been really influential for us over the course of the year, and those that you're going to be really reliant on as time goes on. I want to make sure that there's a real freshness in there, and we strike that balance between being competitive, making sure that we're well positioned to win games, but also that we can get to Saturday and feel like if we wanted to put an 11 out or 10 outfield players that hadn't played 90 minutes, we could do so, and we would want to be able to do the same next Wednesday. And I think, fortunately, then we have that extra day's rest on Colorado going into the game on Sunday. So I think we've been fortunate there, but we will have those types of things in mind. And it was nice to see players like DJ get on the pitch tonight, who's incredibly sort of solid citizen, really good guy for the group, and really coachable and really helps the environment. So I think it was... it was nice to be able to get him to feel like he was really contributing to a game at this level.
Talk a little bit about Marcanic coming in, obviously as a defensive player, but even when he starts playing more attacking role and getting into that space. Same with Taylor as well.
Yeah, he's done almost on every occasion where he's been called upon to add a bit of spark as a substitute. He's done it, and I think that's the way in which he's become such an important player to us. I mean, if you look back to last year, there was points at which Ant wasn't getting in a squad for us, and he was left out of a couple of squads. But I think he's approached it moment by moment and minute by minute, and each time he's been given a chance, he's been able to make an impact, and now he's got himself into a position where he's an incredibly important player for us both on both sides of the ball. And there's been a couple of home games that are very memorable this year, Chicago being one of them, where he comes on in these types of situations and he can show a real killer instinct. And I think against a tired team, his freshness and athleticism and change of pace was really tough to handle. So I'm really pleased that we've got him to the position we have, because he's been such an influential player for us on the pitch, but also off the pitch. He's a top guy, and I think you see every time he scores, you can get a sense of how important he is to the group with the way people celebrate with him.
And we have one question via Zoom. Jose Ramon, adelante.
Hello, Coach. Do you hear me?
Got you.
Good night, Coach. Ramon Esteves, Magazine Sports. First of all, congratulations for the win. I would like to know your opinion about today's opponent, about Gallos Blancos. What do you think about the team you confront today?
No, well, obviously we know they're in a difficult moment in the league, and we had a sense of that vulnerability maybe before the game, and felt like if we could start the game strong and we were a good version of ourselves, and we were a Minnesota team that was able to show why it's why we have been such a good team over the course of the year, then we'd have a good chance of winning the game. But I would say that for anyone at the moment, we're one of those teams that, relative to our level, we feel like we can compete with anyone on our day, and certainly teams with more vulnerabilities in terms of their rhythm and the level that they've been able to find in their league. We would fancy our chances if we play to our level, and that was the message before the game, that irrespective of what the opposition did, and in this case it was very difficult to predict based upon what they've done over the opening games. They've been fairly inconsistent in terms of team selection and shape and the way they've played. So for us, it was a game about getting to our level in terms of certain principles and our way of playing, and we trusted that would get us to where we ultimately got to. So we were very much focused on us tonight and not so much on the opposition and where they were.